What's going on, guys? Dottz here, and today I'm bringing you my latest Magicka Templar PvP build for the Elder Scrolls Online Ascending Tide patch. So my Magplar has changed a little bit from last patch going into this patch, just with the way that the game has evolved and changed with Ascending Tide, with new classes getting access to more healing than ever before due to the dynamic scaling. I personally felt that Magplar needed a little bit more damage to actually be able to push people over, and plus one of the great things about Magicka Templar is that with the bubble that you have with Living Dark, scaling off of spell damage as well as your jabs damage healing you, the more damage you deal, the more incoming healing you get. And with how strong healing is, this is a very viable way to build your defensive prowess and allow yourself to be able to stay in combat longer, which is kind of what this build is focused around. So like I do always say though before my builds, guys, this is just what I like, what I use, and what I find success with and what works for me. If you want to change something, run something else, alter the build in any way, go right ahead. This is just simply what I have found success with and what I have enjoyed using. Now, kicking it off, guys, we're going to be starting with our first set, our monster set, and that is going to be Magma Incarnate. So Magma Incarnate gives us a line of dual recovery, magic, and stam. And when you heal yourself or a group member with a single target healing ability, you grant the lowest health group member within 28 meters minor courage and resolve, increasing their damage and their armor. This lasts up to 10 seconds, and this effect can occur once every 15 seconds, and this little orb will bounce up to 3 times. So if you're solo, it'll have about a 66% uptime, but if you have, group members, this could actually have 100% uptime. Love this monster set. It is absolutely amazing. It is just the Swiss Army knife of monster sets. It gives you recovery, it gives you damage, it gives you tankiness. There really isn't anything not to like about the set. It's just extremely well-rounded. It's very versatile, and I feel that it works extremely well on both the Templars. I use this on my Stamplar too, and I don't know. I just really enjoy the set. It gives a very well balanced stat profile, and I think it makes a very good monster 2-piece for the Magicka Templar. Our back bar 5-piece is going to be 5 pieces of Clever Alchemist. This is a set that you're going to see a lot from me this patch because of how good it is in the current meta. 2 lines of maximum health, a line of damage, and when you drink a potion during combat, you feel a rush of energy, increasing your damage by 667 for 20 seconds. So Clever Alchemist is just the perfect type of set for a meta like this, giving us big boosts to our health as well as a fat boost to our damage. It just fits the meta perfectly. And right now, basically builds that have front barrable sets and back barrable sets are kind of what tend to be the best. And so because of that, Clever Alchemist makes an extremely strong single bar set to give us a lot of offensive pressure. A lot of people do like Olorime in the slot, and it is something that you could absolutely run on that back bar if you want to. Personally, I don't really want to farm for it, so I just go with Clever Alchemist instead, which I think is extremely strong. Just for all the reasons I've stated, it's craftable, so you can make it at any weights that you want. Just an extremely strong single bar set this patch. Like I said, I use it on a lot of characters, and it gives us a massive boost to our damage during our offensive window. Now, our front bar 5-piece is going to be 5 pieces of War Maiden, increasing our crit chance, max mag, damage, and then giving us 579 spell damage to our magic abilities, which most of our abilities, pretty much all of our abilities here, deal magic type damage. So because of that, we just get a fat boost of spell damage to those abilities. So with War Maiden and Clever Alchemist together, combined with the minor courage that we have from Magma Incarnate, we just get so much damage coming from our gear. And during that offensive window, we just put out a stupid amount of pressure. The amount of just raw damage that we can generate on an opponent is absolutely insane, and War Maiden just helps add to that by giving us nearly 600 spell damage on top of all of our skills. Now, because this is a front bar back bar setup, we do have 2 1-pieces available, with one of our pieces being Trainee, giving us a boost to our maximum health. We currently are in a health meta right now because of how much damage is in the game, so stacking up as much health as possible to make yourself able to live longer is extremely valuable. And so because of that, Trainee gives us a nice boost to our HP to help us reach that over 30k threshold that I think most classes need this patch. And then, to no one's surprise, we use my favorite mythic in the game, and that's going to be the Mark and Ring of Majesty, giving us 200 spell damage and 2300 armor. This is just my favorite mythic because of how well balanced it is. The armor is extremely welcome, giving us some much needed mitigation in a meta like this, and the spell damage just just again plays into the way that characters pretty much want to build right now. With the exception of Magsork, everyone wants to basically go into damage. Magsork's one of the last classes that really still wants to utilize max stat due to shields, but Mark and Ring is just perfect, man. Gives us a really solid amount of spell damage, solid amount of armor, and just really rounds out the build with a nice, well-balanced set of stats on a singular piece of gear. Now, guys, in terms of our weight and trait breakdown, this is going to be my normal Magicka breakdown. We have 3 pieces of heavy, 1 piece of medium, and 3 pieces of light. I'm wanting 1 reinforced and 6 impen on my gear. We are running all triglyphs across the board here. We are running 2 arcane, 1 infused. The infused will have spell damage on it. One of the arcanes will have magic recovery, and the other arcane will have spell damage. We run a sharpened greatsword on the front bar with an absorbed maglyph. You can also make this, if you want to, a maul for more pen. I leave that up to you. And then we have a resto staff on the back bar, defending with a weapon and spell damage enchant. Now, guys, moving into our abilities, our first ability is going to be Puncturing Sweep. So Puncturing Sweep will just let us, jabs, 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 the Templar jabs that you always see. Deals damage to the closest enemy and damage to enemies around that person. And then each strike will reduce the movement speed of the closest enemy by 40% for 1 second. And you also heal for 40% of the damage done with this ability. So the more damage we deal, the more healing we get. And Puncturing Sweep just allows us to stay really offensive for a while because of how much healing it does give us. And if you combine it with the rest of the heals that we have in the kit, we are just being healed by so many different things. So having a heal on our spam bowl is just a really, really nice thing to have. The only gap closer you'll ever see me use is Toppling Charge. Toppling Charge is one of the only, in my opinion, viable gap closers in the game because of the fact that it also acts as the primary stun for the build. So it allows us to gap close to our opponents, stun them for 3 seconds, and set them off balance, and also interrupts the target if they were casting. It's an extremely versatile gap closer because of all of the different things that it has on it, and so it really allows you to stick to targets extremely easily. We also run Purifying Light here. So Purifying Light is going to be our, burst of choice and basically the execute for the build. So this is going to copy all damage. When we put this on our opponents, it's going to copy all of their damage taken from us for 6 seconds and releasing 50% of that as additional magic damage to them. And this will copy up to a certain amount of damage, and this value is based on your spell damage. So that copied value will be very, very high when we have major and minor sorcery up, which we do have both of in this build, plus when we have that clever alch rolling. This is going to be a very, very high tooltip. And then we also do get healed when this ends. So we put up Purifying Light. We go into Crescent Sweep, which is the burst ultimate of the build, basically where we swipe our spear with Holy Vengeance, dealing a burst of magic damage to all nearby enemies and additional magic damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. Enemies in our path will also be hit for 60% more damage. It's very cheap, only 73 ultimate cost. This also does help proc Burning Light, which is a passive of when you deal damage with Adric Spear abilities in rapid succession, you deal extra damage to the target. So this is an Adric Spear ability, so it can help proc that. So you go Purifying Light into Crescent, into Jabsies, and then the Purifying Light will burst, and our opponent will burst with it. So it's a very, very strong, potent combo, and it's what you're going to see on the Magicka and Stamina Templar. It's basically their offensive strategy. Now, one of the strongest heals in the game is going to be on our front bar, and that is going to be Living Dark, which you envelop yourself in a lightless spear for 6 seconds, and anytime we take direct damage, the spear will lash back, reducing our enemy's movement speed by 40%, but most importantly, healing us for 2,500 health. This is going to occur once every half second and scales off of our weapon or spell damage or max health. So because of this heal is just a bonkers, man. We are able to stay in combat for so long because of how much healing comes from Living Dark. And if you take Living Dark combined with the heal on Purifying Light, the heal from jabs, all of the heals on our back bar, you just get so much passive healing, and Living Dark just plays into that healing over time strategy super, super, super well. And a lot of opponents have a very, very difficult time getting through this, and it's why burst damage has become so valuable, is because abilities like this just heal you for so much that it's really, really difficult to rot through it. So Living Dark is a staple now on both Magicka and Stamina Templar, simply due to how strong of a heal that it is. My 5th ability slot is going to actually be Radiant Aura. I really, really like Radiant Aura a lot. So basically, you will champion the Cause of Divine Glory to apply minor magic steal to all enemies around us for 20 seconds, causing us and our allies to restore 168 magicka to them, or to ourselves, every 1 second while damaging those opponents. And while slotted, you gain minor fortitude, endurance, and intellect. So this gives us a lot of additional recovery. I really like the skill. I do think it is very slept on and underrated, just due to the fact that we get all of those minor recovery buffs, which are very valuable. And on top of that, we get a way to get AoE free minor magicka steal. It is a ton of sustain to add to the build, and it allows me, I can run this on a 2H, because 2H ends up being more damage than a staff, and so you can run Radiant Aura to get that AoE minor magicka steal, and you get a lot of value out of that, and you don't have to spend as many globals on, like, say, like Ellie Drain if you were using a staff, applying it to so many different opponents. Now, that is something you can do if you want. You can run a lightning staff on the front bar and run Ellie Drain here if you want access to the pen, but me personally, I really like the 2H combined with Radiant Aura, plus we do get those minor recovery buffs that I personally do find very valuable, so definitely something to consider. And again, I think this ability is very underrated, which is why I do run it on the front bar of my Magicka Templar. Now, moving on to our back restoration staff bar, our first skill is going to be rapid regeneration, a very strong hot over 5 seconds. This is one of the strongest healing over time abilities in the game, and it is why we run it on our Magplar, and there's really not much else to say about it. We also run extended ritual. This is going to be our purge, allowing us to remove 5 harmful effects from ourselves and allies, giving us a heal over time as well, and allies can also activate the purify synergy. This is just part of the Templar healing kit. You know, it just allows us to remove skills from ourselves. You just need to be careful when you use this. Pay attention to see if you have Plague Break on you. It'll look like a big, like a greenish orb, like kind of coming out of your chest and like up through the top of your character. If you see that, be very careful about purging. Make sure you purge if you're away from others, if your health is high, and then feel free to purge it. Just be careful purging it when there's others near you, because it can cause a very big explosion of damage. So you definitely got to think more now when you use extended ritual compared to how you used it in the past. We also do run Honor the Dead on this guy, giving this is going to be our burst heal of choice, healing us for a shitload of health. And if you heal anyone who's below 75% health, which is the only time you should use this ability anyway, you restore 18% of the ability's cost every 2 seconds over 6 seconds as magicka. So it just helps make this ability a bit cheaper and more magicka efficient. So it's a really strong burst heal. Just how much healing you get for how cheap it ends up being as you restore that magicka back, it's really good. So it's a very powerful heal. And when your hots are not doing the job, that is when you move into the Honor the Dead. We also do run Channeled Focus. So Channeled Focus is going to give us passive magicka recovery. So this combined with Radiant Aura is going to give us a lot of effective magicka recovery on our character. This also is our armor buff, giving us our major resolve for 6k physical and spell resistance. Also, if you stand within the rune, you do get healed every second. So if you do, need that extra healing, feel free to stand in the rune and you will get a bunch of extra healing coming into your character. Skill is also extremely cheap. It's a very strong armor buff. Now, we do run Elusive Mist as our movement ability of choice, because I do run my guy as a stage 3 vampire. So we run it as stage 3 vampire for a couple of reasons, 3 in particular. Number 1 is going to be on death, reduces our damage taken by up to 30% based on our missing health. This is a ton of effective tankiness that, in my opinion, is basically mandatory this patch to be able to survive the ludicrous amount of damage coming out of people's characters. We also do have Strike from the Shadows, so whenever you leave Mist form, which we do run, you get an increase to your spell damage, 300 for 6 seconds, very valuable. It gives you bigger heals and more offense. And then, of course, we want it for Mist form. Mist form is going to allow us to take 75% damage reduction while we are channeling this. We also get uninterrupted major expedition, allowing us to go unimpeded 30% faster as long as we maintain the channel, but our recovery is disabled during this time. Elusive Mist, in my opinion, is, for me, always been a must run on Templar. I've always felt that Templar has relatively weak range defense, and so because of that, I feel that the Magplar really needs something like Elusive Mist. If you look at like my Stamplar build, my Stamplar is so fast, it's easy to get to LOS pretty quickly, but on Magplar, I've always felt the desire to run Elusive Mist because it just allows me to kite to safely way easier than if I'm trying to use Race Against Time and I'm constantly dodge rolling, I'm blocking, and you're burning magicka and stamina to kite, where if you use Elusive Mist, you're literally only burning magicka to kite. And with how much healing this build has, it's really easy to, if you Elusive Mist high and you end up your health getting low, as you turn that corner, you get the big boost from Strike of the Shadows, it's really easy to heal yourself back up. I just think Elusiveness it's one of the best kiting tools in the game. It's extremely strong on Magplar and definitely a must run. Our back bar ultimate is going to be the Lights Champion. This is going to be our emergency defensive cooldown, giving us a big heal over time for 5 seconds. And this also gives us major force, increasing our crit damage by 20%. So I like this ability because it not only lets us be defensive by giving us a fat heal, but it also gives us some really strong offensive prowess during the heal over time. Because of how much damage this build deals and the fact that we do have a crit buff in our potions, major force is extremely strong on a build like this. And so in situations where, you know, maybe Crescent isn't the play, pump a Lights Champion, get a big heal over time rolling on your character, but you could still go offensive with jabs, and your jab's going to be hitting super hard with that major force up. And especially if you get a Purifying Light during that major force, forget it. You are going to be blowing people up. Now, guys, moving into our stats and other misc things, we have about 29k maximum Magicka in this build, 32.7k maximum health with 17.5k max stam. We have 1457 Magicka recovery on the front bar and 1285 on the back bar. We got about 4k spell damage with 17% unbuffed spell crit, which will go up by quite a bit when we do pop our potion. Also, do remember that War Maiden is not on the stat sheet, so that is something to keep in mind. We have about 9500 penetration with 19k spell resist and 16.8k physical resist on the front bar, going up to 22k and 20k on the back bar respectively, with 2070 crit resistance. We do run the Lover Mundus for increased penetration. Clockwork Citrus Fillet buff food, giving us maximum health recovery, Magicka, and Magicka recovery. And like I did mention earlier, we do run this as a stage 3 vampire. You want to go 64 points into Magicka as well. And for my personal build, I am an Imperial. There's a couple reasons I'm an Imperial. Not gonna lie, one of the biggest reasons is that this guy is also my Stamina Templar. And Imperial is an extremely good race to be able to flex between Magplar and Stamplar. And so that is one massive reason that I am obviously going to be an Imperial. But there's other reasons that Imperial is good. Number one, it gives you bonuses to health and stamina, which any character needs regardless of if you're Magicka or Stamina. And it gives us a 6% cost reduction across the board, which helps counteract the negative effects of Vampire, because this cost reduction applies to everything: Magicka abilities, ultimate, stamina abilities, core combat, literally everything. So it does help reduce the negative effects that come along with being a vampire. The other race that I would recommend for this build is, obviously you're going to need to shuffle some stats around if you do use it, is a Breton. Breton sustain on this is going to be very nice, really, again, helping to offset the cost increases that do come from vampirism. So Breton would be the only other race that I recommend for the build, but again, you are going to need to reorganize some of your stats because your Magicka is then going to be higher due to your passives, and your sustain is going to be higher, but your health and stamina will be a bit lower. So make any adjustments you need to those stats, but personally, those would be the two races that I recommend for this build. Now, for our potions, guys, we just use our Alliance Spell Drought or Essence of Spell Power. This is going to give you your major intellect buff as well as a restoration to your Magicka. It's also going to give you major sorcery and prophecy, giving you a 20% increase to your spell damage and spell critical, which is going to greatly boost the damage that this build deals. Now, moving into our champion points, guys, we have Duelist Rebuff giving us single target damage reduction. We also run Ironclad for direct damage reduction. We also do run Biting Aura for AoE damage increase, is going to apply to jabs and to Crescent Sweep. And then Master at Arms for direct damage done, which basically applies to everything. Red CP wise, we run Boundless Vitality for 1400 maximum health. We run Survival Instincts for 25% core combat reduction. Now, the reason that I use this on this build in particular is because I don't have stamina restoration coming from my potions. And so because of that, I want to make sure that I'm spending stamina like as cheaply as possible. And so Survival Instincts helps with that because it really greatly lowers my core combat skill costs, essentially giving me more stamina to work with, because my only way to restore stamina is through 2H heavies. And so because of that, I do find Survival Instincts to be quite important. We also do run Sustained by Suffering for 150 recovery across the board when we have a negative effect on us, which is basically just while we're PvPing. And then Relentlessness for major protection after we are stunned or feared for 3 seconds. Now, guys, going into the rotation of this build, I pretty much kind of discussed it at length already, but I'll go over it again very quickly. You want to maintain on your self-channeled focus, as well as that's pretty much it. This build does not have a lot of buffs to maintain on yourself, which is kind of nice. You really only need to maintain channeled focus, but besides that, everything else is going to be situational. You also want to maintain radiant aura on your opponents at all times. You're then going to want to go into the combo I described earlier. You're basically going to go Purifying Light, Toppling Charge, Crescent Sweep, jabs, 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 jabs. Your opponent explodes and then they die. That's the offensive strategy of this build. Defensively, you're going to need to use your heals based on the situation. You have 4 different heals: Living Dark, Rapid Regen, Extended Ritual, Honor the Dead. Extended Ritual will usually take precedence unless you have, for some reason, Plague Break on you. Then you need to evaluate the situation where your HP is before you decide if you want to use this. You want to use that high if Plague Break is on you, because you don't want the Plague Break to hit you extremely hard and cause you to die. Otherwise, in my opinion, I would say Living Dark is going to be a really high priority on this build, even though it is very expensive. It allows you to stay on your front bar a lot longer and stay offensive quite a bit. But then besides that, you just swap back to your back bar, apply Rapid Regen, and if all those heals aren't enough, Honor the Dead and hit the burst heals, and then let yourself just come back up with all of your hots and everything, and you'll pretty much be good to go. Magplar I've always found is a relatively straightforward class to play, and just due to how kind of strong each individual ability is. But the thing to keep in mind with this build, guys, is that it is very, very, very offensive, and your defensive capability comes through how strong your healing is. So your mitigation isn't as, massive as like some other builds that I have. It's still really good though. If you look on that back part, 28k spell resistance, 26k physical resistance with that armor buff up before we also get minor resolve. So you are relatively tanky, especially with Undeath. But damage is stupidly high right now. So basically you go through your offense, Living Dark. If things start to get hairy, if they start to get really hairy, then you go into Rapid Regen. And if you're really low, then you start hitting the Honor of the Deads. If things get sketchy, you go into Mist Form, get behind LOS, then heal yourself back up, okay? And then get back in there and go back on your offense, all right? And always remember to drink your potion on your back bar to proc that Clever Alchemist. It's extremely important. You're going to notice that your pressure and healing is a lot lower if you do forget to drink the potion on that bar. Otherwise, Crescent Sweep's going to be your main ultimate of choice, unless things are getting really, really sketchy. Then in that case, go into Light Champion, which the good thing about Light Champion is that you will still have an offensive window during it, just due to the fact that you will have Major Force running on your character. But guys, on that note, I do think that's going to be it for me today with my updated Magicka Templar build for the Ascending Tide patch. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you left a like on it. If you have any questions about the video or the build, please leave a comment below. The comments and likes really do help in the YouTube algorithm quite a bit, so I'd appreciate it if you left those there. And for more ESO Ascending Tide builds, please subscribe as well as the bell to keep those notifications on. So thank you all so much for stopping by today, guys. I do very much appreciate it. As always, I'm Dottz Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next video.